another video. Today we're in the new Mini GP3. Some of you might have seen my video on one of these that I've already done on track. If you haven't seen that, there'll be a link up here somewhere. Imran from Evolve very kindly let me do some laps around Landau in his GP3, which was completely stock at the time. It's not anymore, so go and check out their channel, link in description. I've had this car now for a week and I've done about 500 mixed miles in it, and it's actually been a pretty decent daily. It has its pros and it has its cons, obviously, like all cars do, and we'll talk about them at the end of the video. But let's just talk about what this car is. What is the GP3? Well, it replaces the pretty amazing GP2 from the last generation. I absolutely love that car. I thought it was fantastic. It was a real driver's car. It was about 1,200 kilos. Very involving. Most importantly to me was it was a manual, really good manual as well. That's probably one of the biggest downsides to this new GP3, is that it's a auto only, and it's not the best gearbox in the world. What is this car? What's it all about? Well, it's 1,250 odd kilos, so very lightweight. Only 50 kilos heavier than its predecessor, which is probably mostly down to the automatic box and the slightly bigger engine. Talking of engines, well, this has got a B48, which is a familiar engine to me because that's the unit that's in the current M135i, and in fact the tune is pretty much identical, so just over 300 horsepower and 450 newton meters of torque. It's through the same 8-speed gearbox as well that car has, but unlike the M135i, this is front wheel drive only, so obviously that helps reduce weight and makes it feel a little bit sportier, I guess. But one of the major issues of this car is torque steer. Thankfully today it's fairly dry outside. It's about 13 degrees and I've got some heat in those front tyres, so it's not suffering too much, but it's definitely something we're going to talk about a bit later. We've got a mechanical limited slip diff at the front, which definitely helps deal with 300 plus horsepower through the front wheels, because that's just ludicrous. If you said that to someone 10 years ago, they would laugh. You know, it was always, oh, 180 or 200 horsepower is the most you could ever put through front wheels. Well, that's not the case these days. And in fact, that Megane Trophy R I had a couple of weeks ago also had 300 horsepower and also went through the front wheels, but that didn't torque steer anything like this. The suspension setup on the Trophy R was a hell of a lot better, but that was a 60 grand car as it was spec'd, whereas these are just under 40 grand. And I know a lot of people complain about the price, but I think just under 40 grand for something that's as focused and special and rare as this really is not an issue. And when you see the finance deals that have been flying around, I know bimmerdeals had a few up for sale on his Instagram, they were really reasonable. And I know it's just a Mini, but still, you know, 400 quid a month with a small deposit, you know, I'm not complaining about that. I think it's really good value, especially when you compare it to something like the Trophy R, which is a more special car, but that thing's, you know, base price of 50 grand. So it's at least £10,000 more, and it hasn't got the quality of the interior of this car. In terms of performance figures, well, it has a quoted 0 to 62 mile an hour figure of 5.2 seconds, which is quick, whichever way you look at it. But when you consider this is a front wheel drive car that will do 0 to 62 in basically 5 seconds, that's ludicrous. Obviously that's in very dry and warm conditions, because in the wet you could probably almost double that time with the torque steer this car's got. But that's massively impressive, and it has a top speed of 164 miles an hour, which is also very impressive. 164 miles an hour in a Mini. Insane. In terms of the way the chassis and the handling is set up, well, it's got a wider track, and it also has more negative camber over a standard John Cooper Works. And you do feel that the stability is really, really impressive in this car, although the handling dynamics are not that special. I mean, it's a bit numb. There's really not much steering feel, and I'm not really feeling what's going on underneath me. In terms of the actual ride quality, well, unlike the Trophy R that I had that was on Olin suspension, felt amazing, and the harder you pushed it, the better it rode and the better it dealt with bumps and stuff. The more load you put it under, the better it performed, basically. This suspension's almost the opposite. The harder you push it, the more you get thrown around, and in fact a couple of times it's actually bottomed out on me and you get this horrible thump. And if you get that mid-corner, I mean, it could end in a big disaster, because obviously the car will run out of travel and it would just get pogoed off into the local field or whatever. So suspension, yeah, suspension could definitely be massively improved. It's not horrific, and it's definitely not as jarring as I thought it was going to be when you're just using it as a daily, but it's really not that great. I mean, it's so capable, and it is really so fast. I mean, this against a M135i, once you get this rolling off the line, obviously with the front wheel drive traction, this would absolutely blow it out of the water. And in fact, I think in terms of straight line pace, this is every bit as fast as my M2 competition. That's pretty impressive, because my M2 competition has an extra 100 brake horsepower. In terms of the interior, what's it like? Well, it's all really nice in here. These seats are reasonably supportive. They kind of fit me. The driving position's not bad. It's typically Mini in here. Yes, there are some cheaper plastics, but nothing that I'm really going to complain about. We've got the new digital display in front of me, which is the same one essentially you get in the Mini Electric, and I think this is going to trickle down into the rest of the range eventually. Obviously there's no rear seats in this, which is cool, and obviously does reduce some of the weight of the overall car. We've got this red strut brace, or it looks like a strut brace, behind me. Thankfully I did my research and I actually watched Henry Catchpole's fantastic video on this on Carfection, where he actually explains that this is not a strut brace. It's literally a piece of metal that's put there to stop your luggage coming forward when you're driving. And it doesn't do a very good job of that at all. I mean, I just don't get it. I think it's designed to look like a strut brace, but apparently it's not structurally doing anything, which is a real big shame, because it doesn't structurally do anything, and it definitely doesn't do anything in terms of controlling your luggage back there. We'll get onto that in a minute when I talk about the negatives, but yeah, that's a bit of a shame, really. It looks cool, but it's really just there for aesthetic purposes, which is a bit of a shortfall for something that's as focused as the GP3. Let's talk about the negatives of this car. First one being torque steer as I fight this car down the road. Days like today, it's not too bad, but it's still pretty scary on a public road. On wet days or really cold, slimy days, I can imagine it would be far worse and almost slightly dangerous, so not the best. Maybe some better tyres will add a bit more grip, but I don't know. So yeah, torque steer is a major issue. Lack of steering feel, as we talked about. Just such a shame in a car like this with no steering feel. Lack of manual gearbox option, such a pity, really is. I don't understand that. If there's a manual box in here, it'd be lighter, it'd be more engaging, be a little bit cheaper for Mini as well, surely. So I just don't understand that. Fake bonnet vent. What's that all about? You know, why is it not a real vent? Why does it not feed a bit more air into the engine? I just don't understand it, but it's fake, and that's a shame. And it kind of bugs me a little bit again on something that's so focused. The side blades, although they look good in pictures and they kind of add a lot of character to the car, I don't like the way they look like they've just been stuck on. Like literally you can see suction pads or stick-on pads, a bit like the ones that you use to stick your number plates on. And I just don't understand that. Like they look really cheap and aftermarket when you walk up to the car and you have a good look at them. That doesn't do it for me. Let's just enjoy this little bit of road. This is where this sort of car excels. The front end grip is just mighty. And then ready for torque steer up here. Oh, fighting it. It's a wrestling match. And the last negative really for me is that strut brace and that compartment behind me. It could be a really useful luggage space, but it's just difficult to control your luggage there. There's not really much to tie luggage down, and that fake strut brace does nothing in terms of stopping things flying forward. I mean, it restricts about 3% of that area, so yeah, really not the most useful thing in the world. Now, I think they kind of missed a trick a little bit there. I don't know if you can buy accessories from Mini to sort that out, but it's a lovely big space to throw things in, but there should be more anchor points and stuff to tie things down so they're not flying around in your GP3, because when you're driving this, if you're buying one of these, you're probably buying it because you enjoy your driving and you do a bit of spirited driving, so things are going to fly around. All my camera gear and all my bags and tripods and everything are jammed down there in the passenger footwell, because otherwise they would be flying around behind us while I was making this video, and that obviously wouldn't be much fun for me or for you guys. Right, let's talk about the positives of this car, because there are plenty of positives. I've really enjoyed my week with this car. It's put a big smile on my face, which is the most important thing, especially for a fast Mini. First thing I'm going to talk about actually is the B48 engine, which is a surprise because I'm not overwhelmed by it in cars like the M135i. It does a good job, but it just feels so much better in this car, and I think that's because it's so much lighter. It just catapults it down the road, and it also sounds so much better as well. The exhaust system on this GP3 is really good, and that's another positive, is sound. The brakes are really good, and they complement the engine because it goes well in a straight line and it slows down really well. And obviously a lot of that has to do with the fact the car doesn't weigh much, which is really great, and that gives it the fun factor, which is another positive point for me. It is fun, this car, it really is fun. It does lack steering feel, it does torque steer like a pig sometimes, but it's still fun. Every time you get out of this car, you've usually got a big smile on your face, sometimes for the wrong reasons. I love the way it looks. Yes, ignoring the fact that the side blades aren't finished that well and don't seem to mount onto the car that well, but I do love the way this car looks. I think it's an exciting looking car. It looks like it means business, and it kind of does. And the last positive is price. We talked about this a bit earlier in the video. People complain about the price of this car, you know, oh my god, it's a Mini almost costing 40 grand, but I remember walking past Mini in Park Lane probably 15 years ago and seeing a Mini convertible in there for about 35 grand. I mean, this is a serious bit of kit, and we're in, you know, the year 2020 where you pay sort of 80 grand for an RS4, 75, 80 grand for an M3. So I think something this fun, unique and rare and fast, capable, for just under 40 grand with a few toys, that's not expensive in my head, especially when most people like myself finance cars. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed that video, guys. I've really enjoyed my time with this car. It's been an exciting week, that's for sure, and I am going to miss it. Maybe not through the winter months, but yeah, hopefully get another one next year at some point and take it out on a bigger circuit, and yeah, see how it goes, see what it compares like with my M2 competition around a circuit like Snetterton time wise. It'd be interesting because it is really fast in a straight line, this car too. Yeah, speed bumps, ow. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you at the next one. Cheers.